Hello my friends and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George and today I'm going to be reviewing something I'm very pleased to have in the collection, a lovely collector's piece. It's been out for a few years now actually, since 2018 to be specific, but it's something that I recently acquired for myself, a little Christmas present in fact. But I wanted to wait until I had read the full content and listened to all the various discs, there's 5 discs in total, contained within this lovely piece from My Dying Bride. This is A Harvest of Dread. Now that artwork, I hope you can see that clearly, that is pretty macabre, that is grim. It's a depiction of hell with this grand inferno in the middle and lots of crazy demonic creatures and all this crazy stuff going on. But this is a really cool piece to have and it's a really nice item. So if you're not familiar with these, this is out on Peaceville Records. Peaceville Records have done a number of these sort of big book and CD compilation pieces. I've recently reviewed Dark Throne's Black Death and Beyond, and once I've read the content and listened to the discs, I'll also be reviewing Paradise Lost and the Rotting Christ book as well. But this piece, A Harvest of Dread, is a really interesting read. I'll talk a little bit about the content first. I won't give every detail, but what I really like about these books is that they are packed full of great photographs. There's really interesting bio. The content and the interviews are really, really interesting. It gives such an insight into the band. I never realised just how fraught with difficulty My Dying Bride's career has been. So many lineup changes, other than the consistent Aaron Stainthorpe and Andrew Crayon, vocalist and guitarist respectively. What is really cool, and you know that you've reached a certain status, a certain credibility within the heavy music world when you have a testimony here at the beginning here from the legendary Tom G. Warrior of Celtic Frost. Absolute legend. It's high praise indeed from a very important figure, a central figure in the extreme music world. What I also really like here is you get a full album cover rundown, a list of the releases from My Dying Bride, and you also get a proper breakdown of all the members coming and going over the years, and also associated members. So you've got people like Hammy, Peaceville, you've got producers, graphic artists, people like that. But when we get into the actual information, it runs in chronological order, of course, taking you from right at the beginning of the band's inception, the very early days from Yorkshire, Dewsbury, I believe, formed in Bradford, England in June 1990. In fact, so these guys have been around for over 30 years now, and it's really interesting reading this stuff, hearing them or reading them talking about where they came from, what their ideals were, and this initially, My Dying Bride were, I guess, a doomier take on just death metal, UK death metal, the same as the likes of Paradise Lost at the time, where you had dark, dismal, dingy death metal. And I really, really like the early stuff. But to be honest, I really like all of My Dying Bride's albums. I don't think that they have a bad album at all. Even 34% complete. I still think that's a good record. But like I say, packed full of interesting bio and some pretty hilarious pictures. In fact, I'll try and find one of my personal favourites here. There's an inclusion of some sort of like promo card or a little poster card here, handwritten or signed by Ronnie James Dio, and it reads, "To Aaron, UCUNT, Ronnie James Dio." Absolutely hilarious. Really good, good bit of pally humour there. So as I say, it takes the band, or talks about the progression of the band right from the beginning all the way through. As I say, there's loads of lineup changes, the complexities of touring life, takes you through the Iron Maiden UK tour in 1995, I think it was, where you have Blaze Bayley on vocals and My Dying Bride supporting, they're hand-picked by Steve Harris to support Maiden across Europe. Then you've got the first leg of the Angry Machines tour of the US with Dio. It's just really interesting stuff. And it's very humbling, because I had no idea that, you know, these guys, they still have day jobs and they fit My Dying Bride around them, around their day-to-day jobs and their families. They rehearsed and recorded when they could, weekends, evenings, things like that. So it's actually really interesting. It's really fascinating stuff. I would highly recommend this to any fan of My Dying Bride, and I am a big fan of My Dying Bride. So it's really interesting to fill in all of those gaps. Then, talking a little bit about the discs, the book contains 5 discs. So it's pretty cool, really, that we've got, first disc is Andrew Crayon's track choices, and then the second disc is Aaron Stainthorpe's track choices. So they have hand-picked their favourite tracks from the My Dying Bride catalogue, and then at the back of the book, both members talk through why they made their choices. So we'll start with Andrew's choices there. Really interesting choices, in fact. It kicks off with Vast Choirs from As the Flower Withers. So this actually, it turns out, was one of the first, if not the first, I think it was actually the first My Dying Bride song that they rehearsed together. They wrote and rehearsed together. Really good song. Basically a doomy, dingy, old school death metal track. Really good. Really thick, nasty riffs. Brilliant stuff. Then we've got The Thrash of Naked Limbs, the title track of the EP. A brilliant song. Much more progressed than Vast Choirs. Far more of a My Dying Bride sound to it. I believe you've got a violin there as well. Snow in My Hand, a great track from the mighty Turn Loose the Swans. Then we've got Dark Voyage from The Angel and the Dark River. A very interesting song. A bit of an unusual track because it's a doomy, deadly piece with a really unsettling kind of droning vocal passage midway from Aaron there. Interestingly, Andrew has picked Apocalypse Woman from 34.788% complete. And interestingly, because that was not a fan favourite album necessarily, I think it's a good album, but what is interesting is that Andrew picked that track because he doesn't like it. So that is a very interesting choice. But then we get The Light at the End of the World, rather, the title track from that album, and that is a sterling death doom masterpiece. It's majestic, but it's so miserable and bleak. But it's a brilliant song. And then, Feeling the Misery Completely, we've got Feel the Misery, the title track from that particularly brilliant album. Absolutely superb. Aaron chooses some really interesting tracks as well. A particularly brilliant choice, like A Perpetual Funeral from A Map of All Our Failures, which is a superb album and a really good track. Two Winters Only from The Angel and the Dark River. My Hope, the Destroyer, a very, very dark, bleak track from the brilliant The Dreadful Hours. A fantastic album indeed. Then we've got I Cannot Be Loved from A Line of Deathless Kings, which is I would say a notably heavier album overall, far more leaning towards the death metal style, the styles of old for them by that point. Then we've got A Doom's Lover from Songs of Darkness. And interestingly, Aaron has picked 2 tracks from the Eventia album, which was essentially an orchestral reimagining of some of their tracks, bits and pieces picked from their catalogue and kind of reproduced, patched up together and reproduced in an orchestral manner. And I think it's a good album. It's really deep, it's very dark, it's very emotive, but interesting choice for considering that was one album to pick 2 tracks when they have a whole host of other brilliant tracks. But you have You Are Not the One Who Loves Me, and then you have And Then You Go. Good songs, definitely different, definitely interesting, but I don't know about their inclusion on a disc where you've only got 7 My Dying Bride tracks there. I personally would have preferred if there was just some more good classics. Then we have, on the 3rd disc, we have a brilliant combination of the original Towards the Sinister 1991 demo. Now that is essentially just a gritty, nasty, old school death metal demo. And I think that it sounds fantastic. I'm not sure if this is a remastered version that you get here, but I think it sounds brilliant. And it's really interesting to read in here at the beginning that people were really unsure about what the hell to make of that demo. People were really skeptical. People said that it sounded really crappy. I think that it sounds brilliant. I think that it sounds like good, gritty, old school death metal. And I think that it really, really works. It's certainly dark and bleak. Then we've got the God Is Alone 7-inch single release. We've also got the unreleased Bitterness 7-inch EP. Then we have the Collectors Club 7-inch, which included The Sexuality of Bereavement, which is a really, really dark, dismal piece. Really like that one. Then randomly we do have, and it does seem a little bit random, we have the inclusion of some early production demos from the Angel and the Dark River album, as well as an instrumental of The Cry of Mankind, just tagged on the end there. And this seems a little bit sort of unusual or a little bit unnecessary, but actually they sound really good. They sound raw, they sound emotive, they sound deep. It's really good. Then we've got on disc 4, we've got some early production demos from Like Gods of the Sun. Good tracks, certainly when we're talking about that title track there, absolute masterpiece. It's a fantastic album and in its demo form sounds brilliant. Then we have 34.788% complete early production demos from February 1998. And honestly, I do like that album, as I've said a couple of times, but these pre-production demos or early demos, these actually sound a little bit better because they sound a little bit more akin to what we expect from My Dying Bride at that time. Much more in tune with their sound. It's almost like the mix and the sound on the album is quite different, a little bit less generically My Dying Bride, but I think they sound good here. And then we have the inclusion of some additional rarities tagged on the end there. We have The Child of Eternity from Deeper Down EP, and that's a good song. It's very dark, very melancholic. Then we've got a cover of Scarborough Fair and Failure from the Bring Me Victory EP. Interesting. I particularly like the Scarborough Fair cover. It's very, very folky. It's very deep. And I think that Aaron has a fantastic voice and it works really well with that track. Then we've got Hollow Cathedra closing out that disc there, which is an additional unreleased track from Feel the Misery sessions. And that is certainly a miserable, dark, deep track. Really good. The 5th disc is recorded live at the Rock Noise Festival in Vorst, 1997. And we get the inclusion of some really good fan favourite tracks there. Sounds really good. It has the feel and the vibe of like a bootleg release, less kind of glossy and clear, not quite like the For Darkest Eyes, but I think it still sounds really good. You've got From Darkest Skies opening up, you've got The Cry of Mankind, you've got The Dark Caress and For You, really good tracks. You've got that excellent title track from Like Gods of the Sun. Then you've got All Swept Away, and of course you've got Your Shameful Heaven, a absolute fan favourite. So overall, these discs are really good. You've got the first 2 discs, which are essentially just best of sort of compilation pieces, really. but they are chosen tracks from the artists. So that is cool because of course they have more of a personal relation. These songs are their creation. Then we've got the third disc, which I really like because you've got those great demos and the 7-inch EP tracks. So you're tying up all those loose ends and getting to hear material that you wouldn't necessarily readily be able to access. I think that there are other compilations. They have the 3 parts of the Meisterwerks EP compilation, which is really good. I do have the third one, which combines the first 2 as well. Why I have it, I don't really know, as I have all of their albums and the live albums as well. But hey, collector, the curse of the collector is very real. Then you also get to, you get to fill in the gaps. You get to fill in the gaps in the catalogue and get to really get to grips, so to speak, with their really early embryonic stages, where they were just a gritty, nasty death metal band. But in my opinion, even though it's primitive, even though it's raw, I think that it sounds better than quite a lot of what else was happening in the death metal scene, in the burgeoning scene around that time. Then we've got that 4th disc with the early production demos, and I think they're just good to hear. Certainly if you're a My Dying Bride fan, if you're a deep fan of the band, then you'll really enjoy these because they're familiar tracks, yes, but they sound really good. They sound raw and honest. And then I really do appreciate that inclusion of the live CD, if you like. It sounds great. You get another concert tagged on the end there, and it's brilliant. It's a really enjoyable listen. So overall, I would say that Harvest of Dread is really worth the while. It's worth the purchase. It's not that much money. To be honest, I think on the Peaceville Records website where I bought this, it's £30 maybe. And for all that content, with all the great photographs and the bio and it's just a brilliant purchase. Certainly with those inclusions of the 5 discs, it's a really cool piece to have. A really interesting insight into one of the best and most important bands in the UK metal scene, in my opinion. Certainly one of completely unique sound and position. There are no bands that sound like My Dying Bride. They have their own very unique identity. So if you're a fan of doom, of gothic metal, of death metal, if you even at times it's very symphonic as well. So if you're a symphonic metal fan, My Dying Bride are a band that you absolutely need to hear. And this release, Harvest of Dread, is very much worth the time and attention. So definitely check it out. Thank you very much for watching, my friends. What are your thoughts and opinions on this release? Is there anyone out there who has a copy of this? What do you think? Because I'm interested to hear the thoughts and opinions of other fans out there. Thanks again. Feel free to like and subscribe as always, and do check back soon for more reviews and recommendations of all the good heavy stuff. Thank you, my friends. Stay heavy.